That's one of the first times I've ever actually had to do that. All right, folks, we'll get started. So today is Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026. It is 6:02 p.m. We are in Town Council Chambers at 30 Main Street, Freeport, Maine. This is Town Council Meeting 0526. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We will now move on to a roll call. See who is here today. Councillor Sparta.
Here.
Councillor Pilch.
Here.
Councillor Brown.
I'm here.
Councillor Smith.
Present.
Councillor Benoit is here and present. Councillors Lawrence and Pillsbury will be late this evening, but they will be here. Our third order of business is to waive reading and accept the February 17th, 2026 meeting minutes as printed.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Hello, Councillor Lawrence.
Oh, cow.
All right, now we will move on to our next item, which are announcements, which is an opportunity for town councilors to announce events, services, general items of interest, and for this meeting to present the 2025 Citizen of the Year Award. Councillor Smith.
Whereas the Freeport Citizen of the Year Award is given annually to an individual or group that has substantially contributed to the quality of the town, the well-being of the citizens, and the reputation of Freeport, and has caused a measurable improvement in the circumstances of a significant number of townspeople. And whereas Tom Whalen has over several decades demonstrated extraordinary dedication to the Freeport community through leadership, service, and steadfast advocacy for the well-being of its residents. And whereas Tom has brought professional, financial expertise, integrity, and creative problem solving to numerous local nonprofit organizations, strengthening their fiscal foundations and long-term sustainability. And whereas Tom played a pivotal leadership role at Wolf's Neck Farm, now Wolf's Neck Center for Agriculture and the Environment, guiding the organization to long-term success as a vital statewide asset rooted in Freeport. And whereas Tom has devoted nearly 3 decades of service to the Freeport Housing Trust, providing careful financial stewardship and championing not only the production and preservation of affordable housing, but also meaningful enrichment opportunities for residents. And whereas Tom has been deeply involved with Freeport Community Services, assisting and leading capital fundraising efforts that made possible the renovation and expansion of the Mallet Houses on Depot Street, ensuring that this cornerstone of community support continues to serve citizens of all ages. And whereas through his active participation in the Freeport Rotary Club and the Thomas Means Club, Tom has consistently contributed time, energy, and leadership to initiatives, both large and small, embodying Rotary's spirit of service above self and strengthening neighborhood bonds. And whereas Tom has been instrumental in the remarkable success of the Freeport High School Scholarship Fund, helping establish strong financial management practices that maximize resources and direct nearly every possible dollar toward student scholarships, thereby expanding educational opportunity for Freeport graduates. And whereas Tom has demonstrated grassroots leadership in organizing and fundraising for the complete resurfacing and renovation of the public basketball courts at Freeport Middle School, an enduring community asset originally developed through local efforts decades earlier, in which he also played a key role. And whereas Tom is widely known for his generosity, humility, collaborative spirit, and his unwavering say yes attitude, qualities that have inspired confidence, strengthened institutions, and improved the lives of countless Freeport residents. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Freeport Town Council hereby recognizes and honors Thomas C. Whalen as the 2025 Citizen of the Year for his outstanding contributions to the community and his enduring commitment to the betterment of Freeport.
Wow. Okay.
There's the proclamation. And you can either speak from here if you'd like to make remarks, or you can go to the podium, whichever you feel.
I don't know what to say. I mean, any of those things that Eric just talked about is all because of you and the people that I've learned from in this community over the course of 30 some odd years. You know, I remember when I chose Freeport, I was moving from Portland, and I was just driving around looking for a town that suited me. Came through Falmouth, came through Yarmouth, went up through Brunswick, and I drove through Freeport, and I just immediately knew this is it. This is the place for me. It had all the vibes that I was looking for. It had downtown, beautiful countryside, the ocean, and then it had these organizations kind of tucked around town that you just were talking about, all doing incredible work for this community. And I'm just so grateful to have been a part of it over the years, all the organizations you mentioned. The people that I met there, looking around this room, looking at these people, they're the people I've learned from. I got like a master's degree in so many things from all of you in this room. I'm looking at all of you. It's been an incredible experience for me. Bath Savings is unbelievable. Not only do they allow us to do what we do, but they encourage it. And they want us to be a part of it, and then they support us in that. And I look at Michelle and the branch and the things that they're doing. I mean, it makes you want to be a better person. And Jewel and Molly are here, and my brothers, and other people I don't even know. But, you know, they've seen the successes and the failures, and they have always been there for me to support me, and TJ and Teddy, who aren't here, they're in Colorado, but just thank you so much. I think Freeport, we're so lucky to be here, and I'm so lucky to be a part of it with all of you, so thanks.
So we would love if anyone would feel so inclined to go up to the podium, maybe share a couple of words about our honoree this evening. The mic is open if anyone feels moved.
Be forever.
I know folks definitely have something to say. All right.
Ellie McCormick from Freeport, Maine. And so I've sort of known Tom for a number of years. I know him well enough that I have 237 Bath Savings pens. including that triangular pen that seemed like was an ergonomic kind of, some orthopedic surgeon created that for you, Tom. He is just unbelievable, and just to hear all of the accomplishments, and I think I've known him for a long time. I didn't know some of the things that he's done. He is sort of a magnet for greatness for the town, and I don't think it could be a better selection. So congratulations.
Hi there, I'm John Egan. I have an ode to read. Tom's not dead. I'm not sure what, anyway. Even though I'm Irish, I can promise you there's nothing in this poem that rhymes with Nantucket. At Christmas or in July or whatever month it may be, from ball courts to meeting halls, the results remain easy to see. He speaks around tables all suited and tied, or down at the farm with pigs and cows oceanside. We all see public benefits from common good. His key to solution is to do not what we can, but what we should. And that's what it's been year after year. Raising 3 kids that now follow in step, Freeport's advantage is visibly clear. Jump right in, tackle the challenges, chop chop, he says. Now we're off and we're sailing. No one delivers the promise like our own Tom Whalen.
Anybody else? All right. Well, with that, we will. Oh, yes. Good. Great.
Hi, I'm Terry Whalen, Tom's older brother, and representing his 5 siblings. Jim is here, I think. I know he was on his way up 95 and ran into some trouble on the road with the snow. But we're thrilled, to hear all these wonderful things about Tom. He's our youngest brother, the youngest child of 6. And we all loved him very much. He went up to Colby and never came back from the state of Maine. He loved it. And all of those things that he described that are so special about Freeport are easy to see. I could see myself and my wife and 3 kids growing up in a community like this and being very, very satisfied. We grew up in Dover, Massachusetts, which is very, very similar to what you have here at Freeport. So it sounds like Tom really appreciates it, and you all appreciate it as well. But I'm feeling when I get back to home, I've got a lot to do to catch up to Tom. I did some youth coaching, but I think that's about all I can say. But thanks for making Tom feel so welcome by this town that's welcomed him, and look forward to coming up and seeing you more in this community. Thanks.
Jay Yilmaz. Hey, Tom. I just wanted to remind you that many, many years ago, I wrote a letter to the president of Bath Savings, who's here. Yeah. And I don't know why it struck me to write this letter, but I wrote something about how good you are with relationships and that you wielded a golden hammer. Is that what it was? And I remember saying this, and I wasn't so sure if I was going to get up and say this, but that was written a long time ago, and you really, really are the kind of person, since I met you, you were one of my first friends that I met in Freeport 30 years ago. And Jen and I got to know you and Jewel, and we were at your wedding, and we grew together over the years. And I remember writing that letter because you inspired me and moved me about the way you touched people's lives and built relationships and made this community better. 2 seconds ago, I wasn't going to say this, but I was really moved to say this because you matter to this community, and you matter to our family, and you matter to everybody around here. So thank you very much.
Anybody else who would like to speak? All right, well, with that, we will make it officially official. Be it proclaimed that Tom Whalen is honored as the 2025 Citizen of the Year.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. I've been told that everybody is invited to Freeport Community Services immediately following this for a reception. Council will take a 10-minute recess for refreshments and some conversation. So, thank you.
See you Friday, guys.
So I will go back and I will read the rest of the announcements for the evening. So the Freeport Sustainability Advisory Board has an upcoming event on Monday, March 9th from 6:30 to 8. It will be Sustainability Trivia at Maine Beer Company. The Town Council adopted a property tax assistance program for eligible seniors in our community. Applications for this program are now available. They can be printed from the town website, and paper applications are available at the town hall. Please come during drop-in hours to submit your paperwork, and the drop-in hours are on the website and will be posted in Town Hall. Any other announcements from Council? Councilor Smith?
Yes. At Freeport Community Services, a week from Saturday, March 14th from 9 to noon, there's a Home Energy Solutions and Opportunities forum and discussion. Lots of great speakers through the day from Efficiency Maine, Retrofit Maine, Rail River Heat Pumps, and Maine Solar Solutions. Our state representative, Melanie Sachs, will also be speaking. It's sponsored by a number of organizations here in town, including Passive House Maine and Freeport Can. So great opportunity for folks who are considering what they can do to be more energy efficient in their home, particularly around solar and heating. So good opportunity coming up at FCS on Saturday the 14th.
Great. Any other announcements? All right, moving on to our information exchange. This is an opportunity for town councilors to share information about town-related interactions and engagements, including updates from liaison activities and council committee meetings. Councilor Brown.
As the liaison to the Freeport Sustainability Advisory Board, I'm just going to give you a short report. I've been quite busy organizing public educational events for late winter and spring, one of which was just mentioned, and here's the brochure for the Trivia Night at Maine Beer Company, March 9th, 6 to 8. Should be fun. Also, Freeport Sustainability Advisory will be participating in the upcoming workshop that's going to be held with the Town Council, and they'll share their progress of what they've been up to and future projects. And they have elected new officers with Mandy McPherson as chair, Megan Shore as vice chair, and Jim Reinertson as secretary. So,
Thank you. I will also share that last night, the vice chair, the manager, and I kicked off Civics 101. Councilor Brown was there as a participant. I thought it was real fun. I enjoyed it a lot last year. This was also a really great, honestly, conversation. So I think we have a great presentation overviewing municipal government, and then honestly, it was a lot of back and forth, really good questions. So, and I believe they'll be coming back to the chambers at the end to learn more about committees and boards and how to get more involved in town. Great. Yes.
I've had the opportunity to go a few places to represent the council in the last week or so. Just before this meeting, I went to a presentation about the efforts to restore the Royal River watershed. So, of course, a lot of focus on Yarmouth and North Yarmouth, but certainly important for our corner of Freeport that is connected, but very interesting in terms of just the overall work of stream bed restoration. Our own Alex Abbott was there presenting about culverts, and so it was great to just see what's going on in those communities, including a whole curriculum that Yarmouth science teachers working on to introduce students into that work. The other was gathering of council leadership at GPCOG, Greater Portland Council of Governments, last week. The roundtable discussion was about communications, so very apropos for our ongoing conversations about how we're able to get the word out to residents. Lots of good ideas and strong performance from particular towns around email newsletters, videos, things like that, that I'll be able to share as we continue that conversation. But the bottom line, I would say, is for as much as we talk about our own frustration around communication, leaving that meeting with some of our neighboring communities, I felt much better about where we are as the town of Freeport.
Any other bits of information to share? Councillor Sparta.
Yep. So I was at the FEDC meeting this morning, and we had a great guest in the form of James Cohen, who I know as Jimmy Cohen because before he was this big fancy lawyer, he was the president of my debate team in high school. But and he was there representing NEPRA and their desire to have a new train station in Portland to cut out that 15-minute gap that it takes to go down the spur, and explained in more depth than I think we had about, they've already done a study, there's 3 possible sites. Out of those 3 possible sites, there's really only one, which the staff in the city of Portland don't seem to be real keen on. They would like it to be where the old train station was, which would be an issue with Maine Medical Center, who owns the property. So, but just wanted to bring that to everybody's information and say that I'm really glad that we sent that letter to support.
Yeah.
And if we want to go a step further and say, by God, it has to be Site 3, we might want to think about doing that. But I think FEDC might do that for us. So.
And I will say this was a discussion that we had, I think probably right before you were sworn in, where we did submit that letter of support. You're right, we didn't endorse any location, just the general support of any infrastructure that improves the Downeaster and Freeport. We are happy to see, and I look forward to kind of seeing how the city of Portland resolves the issue of the location. Yeah. Anything else? All right. So now we will move on to the town manager's report, which, as a reminder, is now provided in written format for review before the meeting. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I would like to add that we have final formal approval from the state of Maine of the renewed or extended tax increment financing district for TIF 2.
Way to go,
So that was, Brett does deserve a lot of credit. He did a lot of work, and I'm really impressed.
That's great. No notes. Wonderful. I did notice that you had mentioned there's a strong short-term rental compliance right now. Do you think it's, do you have any thought as to why?
I'm literally down to only about 4 that have been renewed this year.
Wow.
So that's great.
And that's unusual, or?
No, I mean, no, that's about average.
Great, good.
I would just say that much of that compliance is down to our town clerk,
Yeah.
who is diligent in pursuing folks that, much like dog licenses,
Yes.
have not renewed right down to the wire.
Well done, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the manager's report?
Which is a good segue to kudos to our unbelievable town clerk for accomplishing what she does with less than full staff. So really great job.
Absolutely. All right, we will move on then to public comment period, part 1. This is for folks who are here in the room, and for items not on the agenda, we just ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes and introduce yourself before speaking.
Hello, my name is Laura Hench. I'm from Cushing Briggs Road. Thank you so much for doing this after the Citizen of the Year. I am here representing an organization that you probably have heard about called Freeport Climate Action Now, Freeport CAM. We, in collaboration with the Freeport Sustainability Advisory Board, will be submitting an amendment to the town's solid waste ordinance, which we call Skip the Stuff. In essence, this amendment aims to reduce the procurement, sale, and distribution of single-use plastics in the town of Freeport. Our amendment focuses on disposable plastic foodware such as plastic straws, stir sticks, utensils, and single-use condiment packages. Skip the Stuff would make foodware accessories available only upon customer request. Currently, takeout accessories are included by default at many restaurants, and it's up to the customer to remember to decline them. This is unnecessary, as a lot of takeout goes straight home or to another location where there are reusable utensils and bulk condiments. Our reasoning is that plastic is a fossil fuel-derived product. The production, consumption, and end-life management of disposable foodware have significant environmental impacts, including substantial greenhouse gas emissions, litter, marine pollution, environmental contamination, and it generates hard-to-manage waste. Plastic is non-biodegradable and eventually breaks down into microplastics that end up in our food, air, water, and living organisms, including humans. Many plastics are unable to be properly recycled and end up damaging recycling systems or littering our streets and waterways. An amendment to the town's waste ordinance is needed because single-use plastics are problematic in the waste stream. This amendment would save money for local businesses and the town of Freeport. We recently surveyed 20 or more food service providers and restaurants in town, and there was universal acceptance of a skip the stuff type rule. Freeport has demonstrated a commitment to environmental leadership and has been a model for other towns, cities, and the state of Maine. As you know, the town of Freeport restricted the distribution of polystyrene foam food containers in 1990 and single-use plastic bags in 2016. The state of Maine followed suit with statutes that aim to reduce both bags and polystyrene. Furthermore, this amendment is in line with the first goal in Freeport's 2025 comprehensive plan, the environmental stewardship rule or goal, as well as the town's climate action plan goal number 5, specifically strategy 5.1.1, which states phase out single-use materials in commercial spaces by expanding single-use items bans. And 5.1.7 strategy, which says launch a recognition and outreach program to support businesses to reduce waste and substitute alternatives, especially for single-use materials. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Quick question. Do you have a timeline for when you think you'll be submitting that to Sophie?
Do we? Very soon. It's ready to go, basically. Ready to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you'll send it to Sophie when you're done drafting it?
Sure.
Great. That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much.
All right, great, thanks.
Yeah. Any other folks who'd wish to speak?
Good to watch myself walk across. I've got to straighten up more. Hi, my name is Chalmers Hardenberg. I live in Freeport, and I represent the people in the 54 condominiums next to the Freeport Railroad Bridge right down the street here, which is one of the DOT projects, as you all know. Today, I went to the Regional Transportation Advisory Committee, RTAC, and I presented a plea for transparency, noting that we still have no explanation for why the bridge cost dropped from over $5 million to $375,000. Now, we know informally that DOT and its consultant have literally gone back to the drawing board, but there's no place we, the great unwashed, can go to find out why that happened. I propose to the RTAC that DOT provide a web page for substantive projects, describing the project and providing updates. If this web page existed for the railroad bridge, then DOT and GPCOG could provide a link to the public, and we could know why there was this change. At the RTAC meeting, members, as well as GPCOG Chief Christina Egan, expressed unease with the lack of information from DOT, not just about the bridge, but about many things, and they called for more transparency about DOT procedures. The RTAC seemed to agree that at a future meeting, the broad transparency question would be discussed. Now, while the public is not watching that RTAC meeting on Zoom, it did hear for the very first time a public statement about the decrease in funding for the bridge. DOT Representative Claire Winter told the meeting that the funds previously allocated to the railroad bridge rebuilding, more than $5 million, were given to other projects which were farther along towards actual construction. I was absolutely delighted to hear several members say DOT does not have the money for all of its projects. Now, we know it's common sense not to raise that bridge. Now I hear it also makes fiscal sense. Claire Winter also said DOT was looking at a range of options, which we've heard from Sophie, including one which would do nothing. And she repeated what we have heard from Sophie and other officials. In the spring, we will have a public meeting where a range of choices about the railroad bridge will be presented. So what's next? Well, Freeport resident Allison Burson is a member of the PACS, the Portland Area Comprehensive Transportation System Policy Board, and Joanna Benoit is vice chair. I intend to work on a proposal for specific steps toward transparency, including my thought about a web page, which Allison, Joanna, and other people. I'm happy to answer questions or discuss this with anyone. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Chalmers? And I will say, too, that there is a memorandum of understanding between PACS and Maine DOT to work on sort of more of this transparent and clear process for decision-making, so this aligns very well with that.
Well, that was a topic of discussion. Christina brought that very point up.
Yes. Yeah, we're early on, and there are definitely challenges and successes. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Thank you. Anybody else who would like to speak? Welcome, Councillor Pillsbury. All right, then we'll go ahead and we'll close the public comment period. So now we're moving on to new business. So item 17-26, which is our consent agenda. I do want to call out for item 1726B that there are 4 names that were added on after the list was linked to the materials, which are Steve Schlipf, Laura Hench, Cynthia Flores, and Story Landis for election clerks to serve April 1st, 2026 until April 1st, 2028.
Do you have their party affiliation?
And they are Democrats. All 4 of them from the caucus on this past Sunday. Any other questions or thoughts on the consent agenda? All right, Councillor Smith.
Be it ordered that the March 3rd, 2026 consent agenda be adopted.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right. Moving on to item 18-26, this is a public hearing for amendments to the Town of Freeport Ordinance, Chapter 11 Building Code, related to availability of approved permits and files for inspection by the public.
So this is actually a pretty simple amendment that now requires a true copy of an approved building permit to be made available for inspection on site, and also clarifies what the town will keep in its records here, ensures that we have to do that. It also says that permittees should display their permit on premise to be visible from the street, and that is to provide abutters information about what they're doing. The state law actually prohibits us from requiring that, even though that would save a lot of notice issues. We can't require it, so we're just asking people to do it.
Any questions? All right, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. All right, nope, all right, and we'll go ahead and we'll close the public hearing. Any other final questions or thoughts? Councillor Brown.
Be it ordained that proposed amendments to Chapter 11 Building Code Ordinance for the Town of Freeport be approved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. All right, item 19-26. This is to set a public hearing, basically to address the charging to park and sorry about that, to charge the public to park in the Village Commercial 1 and 2 zoning districts. Okay. And Councillor Smith is recusing himself from this conversation. Go ahead, Kyle.
Hey everyone, Kyle Drexler, Town Planner. So the last time this topic was in front of council gave direction for the planning board to work on a draft zoning amendment that would create language that would prohibit paid off-street parking, specifically in the VC1 and VC2 at the planning board level. So staff prepared a fairly simple, straightforward ordinance amendment to take to the planning board. We had the public hearing on February 4th. It really just touches on two distinct sections of the ordinance. One, we updated the definition of shared parking, just because shared parking is only allowed in the VC1, and one of the restrictions that would prevent something from being considered shared parking is if it was paid. So since we were creating a separate, more inclusive ban on charging the public to park in the VC1, VC2 district-wide, we took that line out of the definition. So now we just have this new standard in section 514, which is our off-street parking section, that clearly would prohibit any charging of the general public to park in the VC1 and VC2. So the planning board discussed it. They had a minor modification to just the way the standard was worded from the original staff proposal, but substantively there were no big changes or comments at the planning board level. The board voted unanimously 7-0 to recommend it to town council for adoption, and that it was consistent with the comprehensive plan. Happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Pillsbury.
Was there any public comment at that meeting?
I believe LL Bean was there and spoke in favor, kind of echoing their previous comments on the topic from other meetings and workshops. I don't believe there was any other public comment at the meeting.
Anything submitted?
No.
Okay, thanks.
I will say, as most people know, this has been an ongoing conversation since, I believe, September. So this is July. Yep. So I think the lack of questions and comments now indicate sort of the robust conversation that's happened throughout the process.
The board did, just touch on the fact that obviously it's not necessarily a forever thing, that if it's wants to be revisited in the future, that can always be a discussion. So.
Absolutely. And I think that we'll get more clarity on that as we continue with implementing the downtown vision in VCI. Great. So again, this is to set a public hearing. Any other final questions or thoughts right now for Kyle? All right, Councillor Pilch.
Be it ordered that a public hearing be set for March 17th, 2026, at the Town Council meeting starting at 6 p.m. in Town Council Chambers, 30 Main Street, to discuss proposed amendments to Chapter 21 Freeport zoning ordinance regarding restrictions to paid parking in the Village Commercial District 1 and Village Commercial 2 zoning districts.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, that's 6-0. Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks.
You fixed it.
Thank you for all the concerts.
Yay. All right, moving on to item 20-26. So this is also to set a public hearing to discuss the proposed capital improvement program for FY27 to FY31. Just a reminder that we have the presentation of this later on today in other business. Anything you'd like to say?
I would just also remind folks, this is the kickoff to budget season. However, this is not the capital budget. The council sets the plan first. We'll go through some workshops about the plan, and then in April, we actually adopt a plan that then becomes the basis for a large piece of the operating capital and TIF budgets that will come to you on April 21st.
Great. Any questions? Councillor Lawrence.
Be it ordered that a public hearing be set for April 7th, 2026 at the Town Council Chamber meeting starting at 6 p.m. in Town Council Chambers, 30 Main Street, to discuss the proposed capital improvement program for fiscal year 27 through 2031.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on to item 21-26. This is to consider adopting a policy for public comment at town council meetings.
Ready?
Yes, take it away.
So we actually began this conversation after state law changed, and in 30A, section 2608, they began to actually create some minimum standards for legislative bodies, which would be like boards of selectmen and town councils with regard to allowing public comment. And Maine Municipal Association came out with guidance that it really was best practice for towns to have a policy that kind of outlined how they managed public comment so that it was handled in a consistent way. So to come up with an initial draft, we took the town council's current rules of order and procedure, specifically sections 8 and 33, and also guidance from Maine Municipal Association from this past July that went out to all municipalities, and state law. And we drafted a policy. That policy went to the ordinance committee. We had a lively discussion about it, and there were some questions about, in the original policy, wanting a little bit more detail around controlling disruption and also how, like, the actions that were going to take place. So I took that, worked it in, and then because this is trying to balance free speech rights, felt like it was very important for the town attorney to weigh in. I'm glad I did, because they corrected some of my more content focused and really helped guide. This is not significantly different than what went to the ordinance committee. I think it reflects the conversations that we had. The town attorney has looked at it. I would draw your attention to section 7 that talks about disruptive behavior. And this is where we really talk about the fact that there are 2 limitations on public comment, really. The first is we're saying under a previous section that, I think it's section 5, that comments have to relate to municipal business or the agenda item. And so if it's not related to municipal business or the agenda item, they can be gavelled down or out of order. The next thing we're saying is you can't have disruptive behavior. That's hard because, you know, it's easy to talk about interruption, speaking out of turn, shouting, refusing to yield when their time has expired. That's pretty easy. Displaying images, gestures, or content that a reasonable person would view as inherently disruptive to a public meeting becomes a little gray, but you got to have some gray. We go on to say, and this is where the attorney kind of came in, that conduct such as the use of profane or obscene language, personal insults, criticism of public officials, or making of crude or obscene gestures are not by itself considered disruptive unless it actually interferes with the meeting in progress. And I think this is where we come down to a discussion, if the discussion, I remember my very first meeting, we got Zoom bombed, right? And the person said things that I think a lot of people would find highly offensive. They had nothing to do with our municipal business. Therefore, they were out of order. We shut them down really fast. Somebody wants to come in and talk about a topic that is part of the municipal, our purview, and they want to talk about things that we might personally find offensive. That is, free speech allows that to happen. And I think that is tough. The key is to try to be consistent in what we are drawing as what a reasonable person would find to be inherently disruptive to a meeting. So that's kind of where I am, and the conversation, I think that recaps some of the conversation you and I had about this. But this is where we are. And so at this point, if you want to discuss it, if you're not happy with it, we can send it back to ordinance. But this, I think, is as balanced towards trying to maintain decorum that we're used to wanting to maintain, and people's First Amendment rights.
I also say one thing about our conversation too is, you know, if somebody does say something that does not represent the values of the council, I mean, we can obviously respond back. So this would take away that possibility.
A quick question. The time limits, everybody gets 3 minutes. The chair has the discretion to grant additional time, but must do so uniformly throughout the public comment period. Is that a lawyer thing that we have to have in there?
So I had put, we have 3 minutes and you could extend. And what they're saying is you have to be really careful because it can't be content-based.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
and we saw that even a couple of meetings ago where, you know, we let someone talk twice, so everybody was allowed the opportunity to talk twice.
how are we gonna, I mean, how do you monitor that? Like, what's within the spirit of fairness? Like, are we counting seconds? Are we counting turns? Like, if someone has spoken and we cut them off after 3 minutes, then, you know, 2 people down the line, it's like, no, there's something here, like, we'll let you go. Do previous people get a chance to come back and speak? I mean, how do we, it seems like kind of a tough one to moderate.
So when you think about the fact that you're not supposed to be moderating time based on the content of what people say, I think you kind of end up with the idea that everybody gets 3 minutes and then they can stop. There's nothing that then stops council from engaging them with questions. But I do think you want to be careful that people are saying things you like to hear, you let them go for 5 minutes. People say things you don't like to hear, and you cut them off exactly at 3 minutes. I don't think anybody is going to get upset over seconds, over being able to end a sentence or the end of their thought. I think the key comes into, like, if it were like 3 minutes and 4 minutes or 3 minutes and 5 minutes, I think, or if you let one person come up multiple times, I do think that's when you kind of have an issue. But if somebody went and sat back down and you were in discussion and you want to hear more from that person, there's nothing that says that you can't then invite that person to the podium.
I think maybe there's something about sort of like the spirit of equity. So as long as it's a reasonable expectation and reasonable presentation of equity, that we can kind of say with a straight face, that's the standard.
Talking with the lawyer, I think the biggest piece that has to be kind of ingrained in council is, are we limiting this person, or are we not wanting this person to speak because of what they're saying, or because of their behavior, or because they have exceeded what we would allow anybody else? And those are kind of the buffers.
How do we manage, knowing that we have live discussion and debate and comment here in the chamber, we're also streaming it live, there's a delay, right? How do we manage the discussion here, and if and when it crosses a line, and the impact on like a live feed?
So I believe Tom is in the control room, but I'm going to start my best, Tom Pierce. Based on my initial conversations with Tom, I do think there are some rules around what we are allowed to put out, which is why we have the censor button. So that's why we have the delay, so Tom and his crew can hit that button. I don't think we'll get in trouble for following regulations. I do think that if something was really bad, Tom would just simply cut the feed, and we would then come back after. So compliance on what we're sending out is really important, and being able to maintain the order that you want to maintain here, I think are kind of the two goals. Did I answer that question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, my question was more toward how we align the two, like the expectation that Tom and team have versus what we're saying and doing here. And sometimes these things are a little heated and action maybe slow or quick or too quick. I don't know the answer to it.
So I think people have the right to say the word or the words, and if it fits within the regulatory framework, Tom will hit the button to make sure that word isn't broadcast over television. But it doesn't stop person having the right to say the word here.
And I think that's kind of what I was trying to call out as well, because we had a conversation about this earlier today of, it's a balance of they're allowed to say the word, but council is allowed to express our values and how they align or don't align in response.
I think to your point, Matt, about aligning, I think for us, the priority is the order of the meeting and the right of people to say what they are allowed to say in a public meeting, and the tech team is in charge of the FCC roles and what the feed, and so they can focus on that, and we can focus on the public meeting piece of it.
And is there a check and balance? Or, like, 'cause I'll be honest, like, I don't go and watch the meetings because I live them. But, like, is someone sort of doing that in case it was, oh, geez, like, that's a gray area and, you know, Tom was nervous, not calling out Tom, but, like, the person behind the button was nervous and they hit it or they cut the feed because they thought it was a detriment to the public, like, you know what I mean?
So we have, on the staff side, we have some immunities and some ability to function in good faith and to be doing what we truly understand is the best in good faith. And so I think the fallout from allowing things to go out that shouldn't go out is much greater than somebody maybe being confused and hitting a button, because the person still had the right to say those things. They don't necessarily have the right to be amplified to the rest of the world.
Sure. And follow-up question on that. Is there a difference between the live feed version and the recorded version that gets posted? Is the recorded version uncensored?
So I really need Tom or somebody from the tech team who's clearly back there listening, I hope,
I think they've just hit the button.
to make their way to the podium. I hear them.
Sorry, I'm just curious about
No, these are good
the
questions.
follow-up of all
The other
this.
thing is this is on cable TV, right?
Yeah.
So rules
And I will
are-
say I've anecdotally have noticed edits on the recordings. Hi, Tom.
So what was your question again?
Just curious how, the second question was just, is there a difference between what goes out on the live feed and what can be shown or what we do show on the recording? Like if someone is at the podium and they start cursing, that won't be on the live feed, would it be on the recording?
Yeah, if I made the choice to stop broadcasting, I don't stop the recording, so we would still have it as a recording. And then we'd make a choice as to what, maybe we would blank out the audio if somebody was swearing or something like that for the broadcast afterwards. We're pretty open for what we put on the internet and what we put on the website. So potentially, just to give you an example, I've had some content where there was swearing in the content, and so we made a different version for broadcast, but we left it in for the internet. So that's potentially how we could handle it.
Okay. And when there are gray areas, do you, prior to posting, do you?
I'd have a conversation with staff about it.
Great.
Yep, but we haven't been in that situation before while I've been here in the last 5 years. We've had some inappropriate content on Zoom, and the chair did a really great job of just saying, that's not what we're talking about, so we're going to move on. Yep. I thought, and then we changed our procedures and policies after that so that we were a little faster to be able to mute somebody on Zoom if needed.
Yep.
Yep.
Great, thanks.
Anything else, Councillor?
Do you have, it's tangential to the policy, but one thing I'm always confused about is the public comment period is for items not on the agenda. And if you want to speak during an agenda item that allows for public comment, there's a clear process for doing that. The item that we're discussing now is not a public hearing. So if somebody wants to speak about that, do they not speak at public comment because it's on the agenda, but then we don't necessarily have to give them a chance to speak during the agenda item? So do we want to have a policy on that? Or is it just, as we've been doing, which has not been problematic? It's been okay.
I think, so my interpretation, and this is a good question, is that we would now, once we vote this in, we would now, if someone wanted to speak, they would be able to, right? Because we allow public comment on agenda items per this policy.
Yes, so if it's an agenda item, Oh, involving public
Yeah.
I see what you say. I think, what it says is that people are allowed to speak on items that are on the agenda is part of what is in state law. So if I went and pulled that up very quickly, which I can.
It's like 3 sentences, very loose. But I also think that might be a question for the council as well. Like, do we want to have okay, this is on the agenda, we go through our order of operations, and there's an announcement by the chair. Does anyone from the public wish to speak on this item? I think that's something.
There have been times in the past when we've chosen to not allow
Yeah.
because there are a lot of people lined up to speak about something, but there was a public hearing scheduled at the next meeting. We've said, please come back.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to keep doing that, but you might want to preserve that.
And can we, with the legal language, can we actually say not for this one?
So if you look, let me just read the 3 sentences. And again, this is 30A, Section 2608. A reasonable opportunity for public comment must be provided on matters addressed by the municipal governing body at any regularly scheduled public meeting of the municipal officers. This section does not apply to a subcommittee meeting of the municipal governing body. This section does not preempt or restrict the governing body from adopting and enforcing reasonable standards governing public comment, including time limits and conduct standards. So the way I read that is comment must be allowed on matters addressed by the governing body. So that would tell me if we're talking about this item, it's being addressed. I think if there was somebody here, if Chalmers wanted to stand up and give public comment, I think that that's involving public comment.
And I do
public
think it
involvement.
would also depend too, I mean, like, doesn't mean we have to say, hey, does anyone have public comment? But if there is someone who raises their hand, we have to allow it.
Done that.
Yeah, many times.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where they
Councilor
said,
Smith.
yeah, can I talk about this a little bit?
Yeah.
However, to your point about setting a public hearing and then having a public hearing, when we set a public hearing, the item on the agenda is to set a public hearing.
Right.
So if people have comment about whether or not or when we should set a public hearing about the subject, that isn't necessarily inviting public comment about the substance of the matter, which is invited at the next meeting when we set or whenever it is we set the
Right,
public
but someone
hearing.
might have say, hey, it might be better to talk about this, not maybe at the next meeting, but.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's, the item on the agenda is the setting of the hearing. It's not the substance of the
Right.
matter.
But I think the question is remain, which we don't have to answer right now, is, when do we ever say, okay, is there public comment on this item, or kind of just let it
Usually
ride?
it's pretty easy to see.
I think it's an interesting point, though, because there are a lot of times when someone will say, hey, can I speak on this? And for every person that does that, there's probably a few that are like, I guess I'm not allowed, I'm just going to sit here until somebody says, would anyone like to speak? And without that invitation, we may be missing public comment. So, but at the same time, if we then introduce public comment for every single item, we're introducing public comment for every single item,
Yeah.
and that could have other consequences.
Maybe it could just be part of the intro when you talk about the public comment rules. This part is for items not on the agenda. As agenda items come up, if you wish to speak, raise your hand, go to the podium, whatever we want to say, but just include that in a little section, and then
That's a
it's
great
a
call.
blanket invitation.
So when I was thinking for agenda items involving public input, what I was differentiating were the essential workshops at the end of the meeting, which is other business, which we have as a general rule, not necessarily invited public comment for.
Right. The policy is written as to protect that. Okay. Which I think is important to maintain. Yeah. Okay.
All done with the statute.
Hmm?
All done with the statute.
Yeah, I think so. Other thoughts on this? I will say I overall am happy to have this as guidance. I think for anyone who steps into chair, this is very good reading. So I think it's overall a very helpful document. I just want to make sure that folks are comfortable with what it means. And Councillor Pilch, I really like the idea of explaining public comment once in the beginning and having that just be the expectation throughout.
Do you wanna? I was just thinking, we could just kind of put some language like we've been starting to do for
Absolutely.
the other things.
Yeah, we're setting the
where
precedent.
On the agenda.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, the italicized things for people who might not know what announcements are versus information.
Well, it's also helpful for somebody who looks at an agenda once a year, you know,
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
what to expect and what the expectations are.
Yep, okay. I'll work on that for the next one.
Thank you. Do folks feel ready to vote? Okay, Councillor Sparta.
Be it ordered that the policy for public comment at town council meetings be approved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you to staff and the ordinance committee for that process. All right, moving on to item 22-26. This is to permit food trucks at a town event at Freeport Town Hall, 30 Main Street. We have Caroline online, I believe. Yes.
So the Girl Scouts of Maine are holding their second annual, I believe, Green Me Out event. They will be hosting it at Town Hall, and the town will be participating in the event this year, which is why it hasn't been before you. We are going to have Cumberland County Soil and Water Conservation District there to help us meet our stormwater education requirements, and then we're also going to have some representatives from FSAB and our Environmental Services Coordinator. As part of this event, the Girl Scouts are doing all the permitting, temporary activity, a special event, but they do want to have a food truck. The ordinance requires that food trucks in the right-of-way or on town property have approval by the council. They are proposing one food truck. They did intend to place it out front near where the ADA spaces are. They will need to work with the Codes Enforcement Department to make sure the placement does not interfere with ADA. So we will work with them on that, but they are just seeking approval for the one food truck for that event, which is 10 to 2 on August 18th.
You mean April 18th, maybe?
Yep, April 18th. Thank you, Sophie.
I think we're all very excited for August, so it's on the mind.
I am.
I do just want to call out, I believe you said it, but this is on the agenda because under the ordinance for food trucks, if it's located on town property, the town council has to provide approval. So that's why it's here. Any questions?
So having run a lot of events, April 18th, we're parking this food truck in the dirt out there?
That's a good question.
So I will tell you, staff is probably going to work with them to change the location, but there will be one food truck on town property in a place that doesn't damage town property.
Excellent.
That's a good call, Councillor Sparta. It's muddy then. All right, well, in that case, Councillor Pillsbury.
Be it ordered that the town council approves the operation of food trucks as part of a town-requested allowable activity under the Freeport zoning ordinance for the April 18th, 2026 education and outreach event at Town Hall, 30 Main Street, as outlined in the Climate Action Plan for an event anticipated to have attendance of 250 people or more.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you, Caroline. All right, and item 23-26, this is to consider action relative to a new liquor license for the Freeport Cafe. Just flagging, this is because of a new owner. That's why it's new.
So this is a new liquor license, and with our new liquor policy, instead of having a public hearing, it simply comes to the town council for your review. Gail is taking over the Freeport Cafe, and if you give a thumbs up, I'm going to go approve her liquor license in a few minutes.
Great. Any questions? I will say, I'm so glad we don't have to set a public hearing. This is great. All right, Councillor Smith.
Be it ordered that a new liquor license for Gail Rindo, DBA, the Freeport Cafe, 29 US Route 1, Freeport, be approved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Okay, moving on to public comment period part 2. This is for comments on items not on the agenda, and it's for virtual attendees only.
We have a staff.
All right, hello, Winter and Pete. Go ahead and close public comment period part 2. Moving on to other business, discussion of request to change polling hours during the November 26 election. We have our town clerk here to introduce.
The town manager and I had a meeting with Tom Gray, this new superintendent of the school, and he had a request for us to bring to the council to consider changing our polling hours from opening at 7 to opening at 8 a.m. His reasoning behind that was, of course, student safety, keeping the voters separated from the students. He also did mention bus traffic in the morning is a concern. And as you just appointed my election clerks, you also have the authority to set my polling hours. The first thing that I did was reach out to my warden, Steve McFeeters, who would be here, but he is in an Airstream in New Orleans. So, and I'm gonna I'm gonna say it nicer than it. He said, this is a really bad idea. He goes, we have the midterms coming up, which are gonna be contentious. No amount of advertising and communication that we try to do is going to prevent the line that's going to form at the door at 7 o'clock. I think myself, with the atmosphere of voter fraud and voter disenfranchisement, changing polling hours, taking away an hour, is something that may get your town clerk tarred and feathered. So I tried to think about that 1 hour and what that can mean. Well, we don't get that data from our voting machine. It's not broken down by hours. So I looked at the worst case scenario, which was our last presidential, and I took the total number of people that we filtered through for the whole 13 hours, and we were doing 225 people an hour. So that's 225 people that potentially, if they can't vote in the morning before work and can't get there after work, may not vote. We also are guests of the school, and we need to take their request seriously and give it some consideration.
So I will just say anecdotally, the short time I've been in Freeport, the very beginning of the day and the very end of the day seem to be some of the highest counts. And there are also times that no amount of absentee voting at Town Hall covers, because we start at 7:30 in the morning. So that 7 to 7:30, we're not available for people to come in. We can always have conversations about whether or not we need to expand our absentee voting hours, but for right now, I think that is a concern for Chris. I also want to say that this was not a demand. It was not you must. It was 100% sitting down collaboratively, trying to figure out how we can best manage the needs of the town and the needs of the students. And Tom has been incredibly open and welcoming to the school. So what we said, we had some concerns, but we would bring it to town council, because it's not just that you can set the voting times, it's your responsibility to consider everything and make the decision you think is best for.
And I will say that I want to echo, I met the new superintendent earlier this year, or actually late last year, and want to echo that he's wonderful and collaborative, and I'm excited he's here. And I also agree with everything that you said, Chris. A couple of questions. Has there been any incident? Has anything ever happened that to students or safety or otherwise?
Nope. We always have those stray students that kind of end up in the gymnasium somehow during the day, but that's one of the things I did discuss with Tom, but never an incident, no.
And another question, thank you. And also, we have one polling location. Is it worth considering somewhere else, maybe a second location, or?
At this time, we really do not have a viable second location. With our next election being June 9th, we also don't have the time that it takes to change polling locations at this point in time.
So I would also just say, coming from a community that had multiple 2-3 polling locations, it's really hard, because if people move from one district to another district, they can end up in the wrong polling location. So now you're sending people on a merry goose chase as to where they can vote. And at a time where we have a warden that's really good and 2 staff members that are part of elections. And then we do have a cadre of amazing ballot clerks and elections clerks, but some of them are specialized, and so you start dividing those people up, and then you start trying to cover a 13-hour election, and you start pulling everybody so thin that the voter experience becomes something that is not as flawless and seamless as we like to see here. We worked really hard to pull those 3 locations to 2 locations, and then those 2 locations to 1 location, just because of the problems that we saw with having multiple voting locations. Plow truck.
Yep, there it is.
Just to echo part of the conversation that I already had with Chris, a reminder that the state mandates when we close the polls, but not when we open the polls, so there's no way to make that up on the other end. And I do think that for folks that need to be at work at 8 o'clock, and there's a lot of folks that they need to be at work 8:30, that hour between 7 and 8 is really key, especially if they have responsibilities and with kids after work. I also, I really take Chris's point about the communications piece. We've voted in that location more or less for decades with the same polling hours. And my concern about student safety and traffic with buses actually would be if we changed the hours. That if in fact you did have that lineup, you then have this rush of frustrated voters trying to get in at 8 o'clock or leaving and then having to come back, which then doubles the traffic on Holbrook Street. I think that really could create quite a lot of confusion and more complicated traffic patterns.
And we'd lose a lot of the voters that came in the morning. They just wouldn't.
Councilor Pilch.
In the spirit of collaboration, even if we don't change the hours, we offer to supply, or we do supply a police officer in addition to the school resource officer every year, right? Who's just there all the time.
The entire time the polls are open.
Hopefully very bored. And I imagine that if there are requests that Tom has about safety that we can accommodate, whether it's traffic control or extra people here or there, we would certainly listen and try to support what he's trying to do, I imagine.
Yep.
Councilor Pillsbury.
I I'm not in favor of changing this for a variety of reasons. That said, I mean, have we worked with the school board to, because they have a number of professional learning days, they have a number of like in-service days where it's just teachers doing training. Could we potentially align one of those with voting day or propose it? And my other point is what's gone into the calculus to figure out that the high school is the place to do it? Like, what are the factors that we value over other sites? Because I'm just curious how, if there is a way down the road to change sites and what we would need out of a site.
All right, I'm going to take my first stab at this, Chris, if that's all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we did explore the idea of an in-service day. Chris she introduced that conversation. She did a great job. And what Tom said is we can't do that on our own because Freeport can only have a certain number of days that deviate from the region tech center. And so it is something that we would all have to get on board with, that voting would be an in-service day. Now, if that's a request we want to try to make to all of the schools that send into the region, the regional tech center, then I think we could ask that, but I don't know where we'll get with that.
Sorry, my only comment there is I would think that that's probably not an us thing. If this really is a school and student safety issue, and I'm assuming some other towns have polling places at schools, this could just be a topic for them to
Well,
utilize.
I guess I would think that we would make that request to the RSU. I would think the town council would make a formal request to the RSU to consider that. Would be, when I say make the request, I'm talking about making a request to our partner. And then I'm going to give, and Chris is going to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the location is, it has to be big enough, there has to be ample parking, and it has to be ADA accessible. On top of that, getting one in place, you also have to have, the state comes and does an inspection. There's a whole process that goes into that.
A whole public
So
hearing.
once you get a polling location that works, most towns stay with it until it doesn't work. So if this location doesn't work, we would then want to, I've gone through this process, you go out and your clerk surveys the community and says, ooh, that place might work, and ooh, that place might work. But it has to be accessible to all members of the public, except there are a few categories of people that it doesn't have to be accessible to, like, I think, sex offenders, correct?
I can't speak to that.
Yeah, I think that's the school thing.
Yeah.
But in general, it has to be accessible to everybody. And we need to know up front that this is a commitment that wherever we're going to, because we're not going to control it, will allow us to be there every year, because it's not something Chris can change all the time. From personal experience, we spent 6 months educating everybody that they were going to go to the University of Maine to vote, and we had signs everywhere, and we still were turning people away at the door, and the community was really upset. So that piece, we would want to make the change once and do that. But I don't know where that place would be, and I think if council wants us to think about some place that would be better, we would have to find a place. If you go into that gymnasium, that floor is completely used, and the space between the voting booths has to be there. You can't put them close to each other. The Secretary of State won't let us do that. You also can't have people passing in certain circumstances. We ran into that where you can't have people coming and going in certain places within the voting floor. So it's a challenge, but if it's something that council wanted us to look at, Chris could start evaluating that, probably 2028, 2029 is when you would probably end up with it actually coming to fruition if we found a place. Correct?
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
Councilor Lawrence.
I like having it at the school because it shows the students, hey, this is your government in process. So you get that learning experience or knowing that people are participating, and this is a duty that you have as a citizen. So
I will say that we do expect some pretty significant changes to be happening in the coming years to how people enter and exit if we stay at the school. Simply because we'll be using, I think, the back entrance. But we couldn't for this year because there were ADA considerations, some improvements the school had to make to be able to allow that, and we didn't go through the process. While that doesn't require a council vote, it requires an updated approval from the Secretary of State's office.
My ADA, yep.
Councilor Brown.
I like the school too, and I think a letter to the RSU exploring this regional idea of a school day that just makes perfect sense, because you won't know if you don't ask, and it just it makes some sense to me that a whole region would. I mean, some countries have election day as a day off for everyone.
Yep.
So I don't know.
So it sounds like not a lot of interest in getting rid of that first hour, but interest in pursuing maybe a professional day, having that conversation more in depth, and also having a conversation about what the town can do to alleviate some of the concerns for safety and operations.
So are you okay if Chris and I send a very, just an update to them along with the requests that council is wondering if we could explore, or if they would explore the idea of aligning a day off with the region calendar?
when they do that, it's all the schools, right? It's not just the high school, it's all the schools. And then you lose that sense of just pointing that out.
And I will say, I think what I'm hearing from council and how I feel as well is making sure very much it's in the spirit of collaboration.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is an important relationship.
This is an open question. I really don't know what impact this would have, but if it was all of the schools, is that actually creating a different hardship for voters who now have to deal with where their kids are going to go on a Tuesday? It's one thing when you have an in-service day that's a Monday or a Friday, and maybe that's more functional, but that would be my concern. Of adding a different complication to parents on election day.
In addition, you're removing the convenience of being able to drop off your kid at school and then go vote.
Oh, yeah, there's that too.
Were there specific issues around safety that they mentioned?
Yeah, good question.
Or was it a general, ooh, it's scary?
So I think, based on the climate around school safety and outside access to the schools, the sense I got from the conversation, it was more they are really not comfortable allowing students and voters to be in the same space. The change of the voting hours is about the buses and voters, mostly, is what I kind of took away from it, that having a whole bunch of people trying to drop their kids off at school, buses coming in, and having voters wanting to vote in the same footprint was concerning to them.
So I'll just say these are high school students, right? And parents that are dropping their kids off at school could be dropping them off right up in the parking lot. They have options. All the parents probably should be aware that it's a voting day and there might be issues. I think there's other ways we can tackle this than by shaving off an hour of voting opportunity.
This reminds me, I remember last year showing up to vote and parking was a concern. There was a reason why, and I don't remember. Do you recall?
Parking has always been an issue at the high school, and we actually did talk with Tom about that. We requested that he really encouraged the kids on voting day to park in the other lot. But it always ends up that we just don't have enough parking, and people end up Holbrook.
With the childcare question kind of coming up, does council still want to direct staff to ask about the professional development day?
I second Chip. I love the idea that the students are there when people are voting, and I'd like to point out that a lot of those seniors are 18 years old and are casting a vote during their school day. That is cool, and I don't think that should change.
So it sounds like then the directive is really having the conversation about how we can address some of those concerns with town resources. Yeah.
I will tell you, Tom did, in the conversation, say that they were looking at, for November elections, to try to have a service day. But it wasn't something that was this year. It was like looking out. So it's on their, it's on their minds too.
So Chris and I will be back in touch with Tom, and we will keep the lines of communication open, again, trying to meet the safety needs that they see and be able to vote our regular hours and see how that goes.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to other business item 2, which is the Village Corridor Initiative, School and Elm and Main Street intersection project options. This is exciting.
Hey, everybody. I'm Brett Richardson. I'm the Development Director for the town. And we're going to provide a quick update on the Village Corridor Initiative and then discuss some recent updates to our options and clarify some options for you on the school and Elm Main Street. If I can get the PowerPoint squared away here. I'm not sure what just happened with my computer. Try this one. Tom, I think it's going to.
Did you show that document or not?
No, I'm trying to get the PowerPoint.
Just reduce.
I know, but where's the cursor?
It's over here.
See?
Go to your left. Keep going to your left. There you go. It's right there.
This is so weird.
So hit this one here. Yep.
There we go.
Now hit play. You got it.
It's always a little different. This is the old.
Wrong one?
Yeah, it's the wrong one. That is
You
bizarre.
got 2 open. Get 2 open.
All right. Why is that?
Is that not the right one?
No.
Okay. I think you got 2 open.
That's. Where's the cursor? It's bizarre.
Is that which one?
No.
Okay. Hit escape.
Where's the cursor? That's the old one, so we can close that.
All right. Let's open the right one.
Right there.
Go ahead, double tap. Yep, hit play on that one.
All right. Third time's a charm. Thanks for your patience on that. So we're going to do a quick overview of the VCI, a recap of the last few workshops where some decisions were made, and then we'll talk a little bit about school and Elm and Main Street intersection options. So real quick, just want to reiterate, this is a slide that we've seen a number of times, but what we're working on right now is sort of a key step where we're moving from planning to implementation. And we're talking about the climate action plan, we're talking about the active living plan, the comprehensive plan, the downtown vision plan, and the dog bone plan. And so this is sort of a key step to move forward on those plans. Our geography, our focus area is essentially from Main Beer, the bus stop at Main Beer, north through downtown to Upper Mass Landing Road, past Mallet. Recent workshops, we worked with Complete Streets on January 13th to focus on transportation options. January 14th, we had a great turnout at Freeport Community Services, where we talked more about build-out and development in this corridor. And then we brought that all together here at Council Chambers on February 3rd, where the consultants recapped with a joint workshop between Complete Streets and the Town Council on what they had heard and the next steps on the project. So the key takeaways from those workshops were the location, preferred route for the downtown bicycle route, a cross-section of Main Street and how the real estate there would be allocated between parking, travel ways, and other amenities. We talked about projects at Main and Elman School and Mallet Drive, and then we also got some clarity on how to move forward with the rendering for Main and Bow, as well as that coordinated development design, which is the land within about 1,000 feet of Route 1, and how we accommodate development there that the community's asked for, while also taking steps to mitigate congestion and other traffic management challenges. So the downtown bicycle route location, real quick to reiterate for folks who weren't here on the 3rd, the idea is to bring that bike path up on the east side of Route 1, and then as we approach downtown, to avoid Main Street, to keep the bike traffic close to downtown, close to Main Street, but actually divert folks to the periphery to maintain as much real estate as we can on the Main Street corridor for other uses. The consensus was to focus on approach C, which you can see includes a narrowing of the travel lanes, and then some allocation of space to street trees, as well as an allocation of space to on-street parking where it's well suited. And the discussion sort of landed on alternating on other sides of the road as you move up. So you'd have street trees on one segment, and then that would give way to parking and vice versa as you went down the corridor. So really strong consensus on those approaches to how to take full advantage of limited space and make sure that we're balancing multimodal transportation among cyclists, pedestrians, and motorists. There was a discussion of the School and Elm Street intersection and how to move forward on that with a test of an all-way stop, building off the Main and Bow trial. And then essentially, we also have landed on our next community workshop. It's going to be April 9th at the Freeport High School cafeteria. And the idea there is that the consulting team is going to bring back the next round of work product based on those decisions that we just discussed. That'll give a chance for the community to see those draft concepts and then also provide some input as we move to wrap up the Village Corridor Initiative planning phase. So with that all background being placed, let's talk a little bit about the school in Elm and what we've learned over the last month or so since we last got together and talked about this. Real key data points to keep in mind, the school and Elm Street intersection is a high traffic area. It's considered a high crash zone by Maine DOT, and talking with folks in the community, it's broadly recognized as a challenging intersection with a lot of users, a lot of traffic. There's turning lanes and a lot of activity there. So where we had landed as for one option here is a trial always stop. We've drilled down in the details of what that looks like. You'll see on the lower right-hand corner, those are armadillos. They're bike lane delineators, and the idea here is that we're keeping the installation low profile. So the posts at Main and Bow were visually confusing to a lot of folks. And so the idea is that we would use these delineators with a low profile to create this lane right here, which essentially eliminates some space, tightens up the intersection, allows for the reconfiguration of crosswalks. And essentially, it moves forward on that vision that looks like this at full build-out. In order to get there, we wanted to test it. What we've learned is, drilling down on the details, we would need to buy the equipment in this round. The last time DOT was able to provide most of the equipment. Maine DOT does not have the armadillos and other amenities that we need, so that would be an out-of-pocket expense for the town. The good news is that would be an asset. These are durable. We could redeploy them in other locations over time, so it's a good investment in that regard. Contracted labor, ballpark, we would need to go out to bid, which adds some time and complexity, especially this time of year, as contracting firms are lining up their work for the summer. And we estimated that at about $17,000. We're talking about a few days, maybe some night work. And then also the traffic data and collection would cost us roughly about $3,000 with GPCOG to deploy cameras at strategic locations. Maine DOT has a cooperative agreement with GPCOG that would provide for the staff labor. Our cost would be essentially the processing cost to take that raw data and bring it into numbers that we could look at and understand. So we're looking at probably a best case installation of July or August of this year. That includes DOT approval, which we'll get into here in a minute, but there's a little more ambiguity there in terms of how DOT views an always stop at this intersection. So we'll need to navigate that. There'd be a town contractor bid process that would add some time, contracting, equipment procurement, and then allowing some time for the contractor to mobilize. So the estimated time frame to get through that whole process, we're looking at probably midsummer or so. The long-term unknowns, as we've dug deeper into this, is some questions from DOT and others around whether site distances, spatial relationships, and other dynamics here at this intersection would allow for a four-way stop to be installed. So there's some ambiguity there that is new information to us, which is was a little bit surprising to hear it, but we wanted to make sure that we were transparent about that. It doesn't mean that it wouldn't meet that configuration, that it wouldn't meet those warrants, but there's a little bit more subjectivity than what we had originally understood. And so there is some risk in there that you could do the trial and it might not be able to be permanently constructed. So that's an update, and further analysis would be required. We can drill down and clarify that and come back in a couple weeks with some more clarification on that. But ultimately, it's going to be an engineer's call at that time. So if you read the standards, there's spatial information, there's distances, there's objective data, but there's also subjective criteria where an engineer's opinion carries a lot of weight too. So there's a little bit of ambiguity there with the trial always stop. As we learned this and talked about it with the consulting team, with the project management team, with relevant staff, we started to think about alternatives and thinking about ways that we could move forward potentially quicker with more support from DOT. And so we wanted to make sure that as we think about the range of options to present to you as policymakers, that we highlighted some opportunities here. And so thinking about it, talking about it, DOT has a 50% cost share called the Active Transportation Partnership Initiative. What we're doing now is a Maine DOT Planning Partnership Initiative where we share the cost of our consulting firm 50-50. The Active Transportation Partnership Initiative is similar, and it allows the DOT to be nimble in terms of deploying resources to municipalities to put projects on the ground that enhance pedestrian safety. And so based on similar projects in other communities, the cost estimate is somewhere in the $350,000 to $500,000 range. This is a good data point because what we're talking about is a configuration and a build out similar to the lower right corner there, where you'd have brick bump outs, granite curbing, You'd have the crosswalks realigned so they're squared up, and they would be shorter. And talking about this, you'd have a lifespan of 10-plus years, so it would be an investment that would endure. And you could flip the sequence. Instead of testing a four-way stop to inform the build-out, if this is something that fits the vision of the community, you could build it out, get immediate placemaking benefits, immediate pedestrian safety benefits, and then consider whether further is necessary, right? So one of the key questions here is, if this is what the community would like to see, then there is an argument to be made for leveraging DOT funds to move forward. So those are the big things that we wanted to share with you tonight. In terms of a range of options there's a number of ways to sort of slice it in the middle. But we're talking about, for the trial, an estimated cost of about 30 grand. The town would bear the majority of that. The visual appearance would be essentially grinding the stripes off the existing asphalt and then reapplying paint to that existing asphalt. So the aesthetics are, if it were to be converted to permanent, you get a couple, 2-3 years out of it. It wouldn't be as aesthetically pleasing as a fresh coat of hot top with fresh striping on it, with brick curbs, granite, encasement, and then the intersection would essentially be in a condition that would last for a decade or more. And we'd learn a lot from it. So those are basically the two options. The trial still is an option. We can continue to push on that. There's just some ambiguity and some risk involved in that, in terms of, one, what it's going to look like for 2 or 3 years. Do we want that with armadillos? Do we want old pavement with new striping on it? And then the question is open about whether DOT would embrace and allow us to make it a permanent four-way stop anyway. Alternatively, we could move forward, build the end product, learn a lot from that, gain pedestrian safety, and then reevaluate the traffic controls after that. And pushing on that, the spatial design, the reconfiguration, there's an opinion that narrowing, reducing turning lanes, right? So there's fewer moving parts, better visibility, that you're gaining a lot of the safety and benefits and placemaking benefits anyway. We'd have brick curbs that would demonstrate the true placemaking opportunities that we're looking to see. And we would move forward quicker. The other thing that there is a difference between these options is the time frame where we continue to plan for the Village Corridor Initiative. Essentially what we're talking about, if we go with the temporary, is that we have a draft report in the spring, but we don't finalize it until the fall. Or alternatively, we could wrap this planning phase up in the spring, early summer, and then get right to work in terms of raising money with DOT, making that capital improvement plan, prioritizing projects, and moving forward on that. So those are the two sort of bookends of the range of options that we have. And we have the ability to come back, like I said, in a couple weeks, drill down a little bit further on the risk tolerance of moving from a temporary to an all-way stop, try to get you some greater clarity on that. But we wanted to be transparent about where we're at. Sure.
A lot of stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
How long do you have? So the trial would last 2 or 3 years, maybe? Or that's the lifespan, but what's the length of the trial?
The trial could be a month. It could be longer. I think one of the attributes that was attractive to the trial, continues to be attractive to the trial, is that it has the potential to be temporary and then converted to permanent. Mm-hmm. The question is the aesthetics of it, mm-hmm. and then the open question about whether it makes sense to do an all-way stop there, and or would DOT allow that based on some of the traffic engineering manuals.
Would doing the trial potentially help provide data to encourage permanent four-way stop?
It could. We would be, the data gathering regime that we've talked about is to have essentially a camera at the intersection itself, and then probably one on Depot Street or South Street that would measure any folks who are navigating around the intersection to avoid. The pre-count would happen a month or so before the installation happened, and then, or I'm sorry, right before the installation happened, and then the standard way to do it would be to install the installation, the intersection, allow it to be in place for a month, and then gather data after that. So you would see the impact after folks have gotten accustomed to it. The professional opinion is that because of the traffic volumes, there wouldn't be a lot of people, circumnavigating the intersection. There's a lot of confidence that that's not an issue, but we did hear that as a question and wanted to respond to that. So that data gathering would include sort of on-site and then off-site.
I did interrupt Councilor Brown, so I want to let you finish your question.
Could you say something about warrants? Does that apply to the big project or the trial? Or
So
both?
the warrants apply to the four-way stop, and whether or not the dynamics, the sight lines, the spatial relationships there, from an engineering standpoint, objective data, meet the criteria that the traffic engineering folks want to see. If you read that language, they delineate some of those requirements. There's also a subjective caveat that these are not to overrule the professional opinion of an engineer. So there is a world in which it could go either way, depending on who the engineer is and what their opinion is, which is only to suggest that there is some risk in carrying that out without a purely objective standard for how we should measure it.
I have one more question. You may have heard I've been hitting the streets a while back. It's a great time of year to talk about this, about snow removal, safety, and so forth. And one thing I kept hearing, which seems to be a known fact, I don't know if it's a fact, but brick sidewalks seem to be dangerous to a lot, or perceived as that, especially when hills are involved.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I know the town has moved away from brick on the side street where there is great grade changes. And that's a good question to deliberate. I know that there's a desire from an aesthetic standpoint.
And it might interfere with the mechanical removal of snow, because that's the other finding from my own little investigation was crosswalks. People need to understand that if you're the business there, it's your responsibility to clear that. So mechanical clearing, hitting bricks. First year they're fine. Maybe the fifth year they're fine, but they do.
Yeah, it's a good observation. I will say that a week or so ago, we had a tabletop exercise with public safety, with public works, and we worked through these questions. Yeah, so it's informed in here that the staff is comfortable with the options that we're presenting.
I have two questions. One that's, I think it's pertinent. How do you pick which months you're going to do this? Because in Freeport, from June to like the second week in August, it goes up and then comes down. And like the second week of August, there's a lot less traffic. So if you're doing this test, if you start in July and you're doing counts before July, and then you do a month after you're into September, the counts are going to be different just because the traffic's different.
It's a fair assumption. I think actually fall is ticked up as a really critical year.
Usually weekends, yes, but
we can dial in on that at an optimal time, and I assume you'd want to see it at the higher peak time to understand.
Yeah. I don't really see it. I mean, I just wonder how you picked it because of the nature of our town. It's all seasonal.
Yep.
The other thing, and this deals with like everything, have we talked about possibly, as we go through and upgrade the sidewalks and everything, burying or putting in place something to bury the wires when it's all in? So we don't have to do it all at one time, but, I guess you have boxes or whatever, you can put them in, and then when they're all in and the next wire falls, like, well, you know what, just put that in here and you can take it down. Have we thought about that at all?
I look to the VCI committee for that.
Yeah, I mean, there's been high-level discussions about that. I know some of the math has been discussed. DOT would consider that sort of an add-on, and so we would bear the cost of that all on our own. It's something to consider.
But you know what I'm saying, do it
Yeah.
in parts, so that it's one not as expensive all at once.
From a, we had that discussion actually today in terms of, from a optimal standpoint, how does the town best position itself to leverage as much state, federal money as we could? And the general opinion that I heard was that you would want to do sort of one smaller project and then probably go for the big one. You wouldn't want to do one smaller, come back the next year, do a smaller. At that point, Maine DOT, not to put words in their mouth, might, hey, we spent a lot of time at Freeport, let's spread this around a little bit. So from a strategic leveraging of money standpoint, there is some value in proving the concept and then going bigger. And the next exercise, as part of the wrap-up of the planning phase of this, is to sit around with staff, DOT, and actually, look at the capital projects, prioritize them, and then start putting federal and state acronyms and dollar amounts next to town capital plans so that we're showing which program is going to fund which place in which year in which priority. So that's part of this, is to map that out. We're getting close to that.
It has come up also, Chip, that could be a use of TIF funding once we have sufficient TIF funding. So that, because as Brett said, it's something that DOT might support, as in be in favor of, but it's not something that they pay for.
To double down, I'm really happy we got DEC approval on the TIF that we just extended. That's really exciting. There's resources in that TIF to fund this build-out. And with DOT willing to pay half of that, it's pretty cool to take TIF dollars and then leverage those TIF dollars with a 50% state match in the first year of the program. I mean, that shows the horsepower. It shows that these things come together in a strategic way and have a real impact for our downtown. So there's an opportunity there, perhaps. But it's also a move. It's a commitment.
Brett, could you go back to the slide with the placemaking right there? So my initial thoughts are that while this does delay the rollout, this would get us probably closer to where we want to be without spending the money on the trial. Also because if we were to do that much and then did the study for whether or not a four-way stop was warranted, then you're basing it on those sight lines in this build-out rather than the current sight lines. My question about this, though, if we were to do this in spring of 2027 without a four-way stop, where we are removing the turning lanes, is have any of the planning partners looked at what that would mean in terms of traffic flow? Because you would, to your point, get some of the benefit of effectively a stop there if everyone coming south on Main Street has to wait for every car that is turning onto School Street, rather than having the turning lane as it is now. And if there's no reason for the traffic going north to stop, to let those cars turning onto School Street go, then I'm seeing that there's some potential backup there until you get backed up from Mallet Drive, in which case people are perfectly happy to stop and let cars turn if they know they can't go anywhere. But if we've solved the problem at Mallet Drive and everybody's flowing north very efficiently, then you have a potential of really stopping folks coming south who are trying to get onto School Street. So that would be my concern about taking those turning lanes out without the benefit of the four-way stop. So I'm just curious whether that has been looked up by any of the engineers and what their thoughts are around that.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a good observation. We have spent probably collectively with the consulting team, our main DOT partners and staff over the last few weeks, and the last time we spoke about this, debating this pretty significantly. And there hasn't been a lot of concern about that. And to go one step further, that technical team is comfortable based on the Main and Bow intersection trial that an all-way stop in downtown works. So there's a lot of comfort from a logistical, traffic flow, spatial flow standpoint that we covered a lot of ground in the fall and built a lot of confidence from an engineering standpoint. And that there's also the possibility to have an always stop at a reconfigured Main and Bow, and maybe you don't need one at School and Elm there. Or if you had an always stop at School and Elm, you might not need one at Main and Bow. So there is some value. The way I heard it explained to me was that if you converted Main and Bow and School and Elm, and maybe others further south depending on budget and priority, into tighter, shorter crosswalks, better visibility, reduced turning lanes, that you would get 80% of the way to your placemaking and your safety goals. If you put one four-way stop or all-way stop at one of those intersections, you would get 90% to your safety and placemaking goals. And if you had stop signs at, always stops at both intersections, you'd be at 100% of your safety and placemaking goals. There may be some unforeseen, downsides from a traffic flow standpoint, but those are a few of the ingredients that could work together. One, just reconfiguring the spatial relationships that make it better, easier to see, safer, tighter. And then you have a little bit more flexibility in terms of how you use stop controls to sort of get that cherry on top of the placemaking and safety sundae, if you will.
Could you go back one more?
Sure.
For the trial, I'm looking at School Street and coming up there. It looks like we would have to grind and restripe where the center line is coming up the hill. Is that right?
Yes.
So if we were to do a trial for a month or two, would we grind, restripe, and then when the trial's over, assuming we don't want to keep it for long, we would have to restripe it again? Is that how that would work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I'm not opposed to that. I'm just clarifying. And I also have concerns about people coming north on Main Street, turning right onto School Street with the big trucks or around where Sherman's is. I imagine we'll probably get some feedback about how they dislike that turn under this configuration, but.
I do believe that School Street is not for trucks. They're not, trucks aren't supposed to use School Street.
Travel down.
Oh, okay.
So it's not a non-issue, but.
And coming north, it'd be less likely because they'd be going down Bow anyway. But my bigger question or comment is, I feel like we want different things out of each of those intersections. I feel like Bow and Main is a very distinctive heart of town, placemaking opportunity, town square, like all the things that we've been saying about that intersection for a long time. Less so at School and Elm. I feel like School and Elm is more of a traffic issue that we're solving. We're making the residential density, we're increasing the density of Elm Street a little bit now and probably more in the future. And people are already saying that it's difficult to turn, both coming from School and Elm, it's difficult to turn onto Main Street. So I feel like placemaking is not as important, and I feel like traffic control is more important. So I'm leaning more towards the four-way stop trial at School and Elm. When I look at the brick sidewalks on the next slide, it's pretty, but I don't know that affords us a giant opportunity like it does at Main and Bow. We have not wider sidewalks, but I don't see cafe tables, public art, like significant things happening there other than the pedestrian improvements, which I feel like we get with the stop signs anyway.
So I would just clarify that I think those bump outs are more about safety than placemaking for me when I look at that.
That's my point. Like, there's not a lot of placemaking benefits,
Oh, yeah, I don't,
This-
yeah. I think
this configuration.
when we were having these conversations, it was about safety.
Okay.
It was about shrinking the crosswalk and bumping out, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that my concern about many crosswalks, but particularly the one from Sherman's across to Elm Street, I have multiple times seen pedestrians very nearly get run over by cars that are rushing through that, and they can't see them because of the car stopped in the turning lane. And they're so excited to get out from behind the car that's turning that they're racing across that because, narrowing that crossing is a big concern, I think.
We just want it all, Brett.
Could we do both? Like, is that an option, to do the four-way stop trial, and then if we like how things are going, we could do this as
Yeah,
well?
there's no reason that we couldn't. That's an option.
Yeah, I think you were just saying that if we did it this way, it'd be less expensive because you're not spending the $30,000.
So-
Well, yeah, right.
So can we also speak to the potential of doing a demonstration and then having DOT tell us no? So spend this money, get people used to this, and instead of that grand idea we had that we would just leave everything here, what we learned just recently is it's questionable whether or not four-way stop will meet Federal Highway and MDOT.
Because it's Route 1.
You had mentioned, the way you framed it was like the bookends. What's in the middle? Like if these are the bookends of our options, what's in the middle?
Well,
Sorry.
there's essentially what Dan just said, where you take the trial and defer, is an option. There's not a lot of bookends, but this gives you the sense for how to go about it. You could do the trial. You could lay fresh hot top down, do the trial with the armadillos and have fresh paint. That'd look better. That probably would last a little bit longer.
Yeah.
I guess, the question, I think, if I were in your seat, would be, if this brick aesthetic with the safety enhancements that Sophie just, clarified, is where we want to get to, which I think a lot of the planning has suggested that it is, that there is a lot of value for wrapping up expeditiously the planning phase that we're in and moving towards that implementation. And the opportunity to leverage TIF dollars and to, if you spend 30 to learn a little bit more, but arguably not a tremendous amount more about traffic. We've done that. We've learned a lot. That staff time, capacity, prioritization, the ability to really focus on a few key priorities and not be spread thin in terms of how we're thinking about this. I've heard thoughtful people at Complete Streets and others, register who would be in favor of these projects, register concerns about the confusion and the whiplash of going back and forth between scenarios that some of these things offer. So we could come back in a couple weeks and drill down further into a few more scenarios. That would make a lot of sense. I think the key trade-off is present in these two options, though, and that is, do we want to spend staff time to develop this? There's some risk in getting a contractor to respond because of where we're at in the cycle. It's just the trial has some inherent risks in it. That doesn't mean it's not worth doing. But if you can see it with the brick rendition here in the lower right of where we want to get to, if you can answer that question in the affirmative, another question would be, since DOT would do a 50% cost share, up to 500 grand. Do you want to do another intersection? You know, I mean, you could go bigger potentially if this is where you want to go. Depends on what your comfort level is. But we could drill down and create some more scenarios for you if you wanted to. I think the trade-off and the key question is here.
So basically the question is this our long-term vision for the intersection?
Is it your long-term vision? If it is, there's a lot of value to moving it in that direction.
Does the brick interfere with the traffic if it was coming down to the right of where that car is?
Actually, that's a key differential from where a lot of the issues arose at Main and Bow. If you recall, the lane that was removed on Bow Street was in the middle.
Yep.
And so trucks were up flush to that curb and they had to go, and so the idea here would be that by actually getting rid of the right-hand turn lane and moving the traffic towards the center,
right,
you're actually improving the turning radius there.
Right. And I understand. What I'm saying is, if we did this and we tried the four-way stop and we couldn't do it, we'd still have this. Could you still put a turning lane in there if we needed to? Or does that brick that comes out into the road, is that raised so you?
Yeah, it'd be granite curbs. I mean, it'd be sharp.
Okay.
It'd be nice looking.
It's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
So if you flattened it out, it looks like it's there. You might be able to put the turning lane.
I shouldn't speak so definitively. There may be treatments. You know, and we would have 88 tip downs, and you know, it'd be up to code that way.
And I'm sure an engineer would make sure a turning radius would be considered, I would hope.
Right, but I'm just saying, if we did this, a DOT came back and said, no, you can't have your four-way stop. We still have a nice-looking intersection. It's still sort of shorter.
Yeah.
But you still could put the turning lane back, because if we just did this, we didn't have a four-way stop, like everyone has said, you're going to be backed up to Mallet certain times of the day. Not all the time, but.
Right. And there's, you know, we're working on some adjustments for Mallet Drive too, to smooth that out.
So I think in sort of with the goal of moving the conversation along, the question we're looking for, you're looking for guidance of, what are we thinking? Do we want to do the demonstration, the four-way stop?
I think I appreciate that. We're looking for clarity tonight, and then, you know, we can move forward to clarify these options further and come back in a couple of weeks. We could start to focus our energy on one or the other over the next couple of weeks and come back. Ideally, it's really your call. I mean, this is an important decision. It's an important moment, and I think it comes down to a level of comfort of whether or not, you know, that fits the vision that we've been striving for. And if it does, then, you know, we have a willing partner in Maine DOT to move forward with it.
And I think really what makes me feel comfortable kind of saying, yes, I'm leaning towards the long-term bump out option is that it doesn't take away our ability to do a four-way stop in the future. Yeah. So why we should move forward on things that we know we want to do while we try and figure out the question mark on the other things.
How do we find out if they'll let us do a four-way stop there or not?
We need to dial in the engineering a little better and get some more clarity on whether or not this will comply with the warrants and meet the warrants. But ultimately, you know, there's engineering opinions and they can differ. So we may or may not know until we submit that application, which could be a few months from now. We could do the trial, get all excited about it, and then.
How can we do the trial without them deciding if there could be a four-way stop there or not?
Be temporary versus permanent. So they in DOT's, you know, wisdom, they're becoming a lot more flexible about trials. Trials are good. We learned a lot in the fall, you know?
Brett, if we submitted for a four-way stop and we were told it did not meet the warrant, how long until we can submit again?
I don't know that answer.
With the subjectivity of which engineer we happen to get in the lottery.
It's a fair question. I don't have that answer.
So how are folks feeling?
Well,
Councilor Pilch, I mean,
I've got a question. It perplexes me that there's standards that are objective, and we can evaluate this intersection against those. And I understand that then there is a subjective, does this feel right? But if we're confident that we meet all the objective standards, that, like, it seems to me that DOT's response is what I would give if someone was asking my opinion on something that I hadn't evaluated yet and wanted to do a little CYA, right? But if we're sure that we can meet the standards, I mean, that takes us, unless there's some drastic opinion that we can't predict, or we could even go out and probably just get an opinion on our own to guide us and say, I think you're going to be fine, or, you know, if I were evaluating this intersection, I'd say yes. Like, I know it won't hold water in the final review, but it would tell us if we're on the right track. I guess I just don't understand that process, and that's very confusing to me as to why that's the opinion at the moment.
It's an excellent point, and like I said, and I think Sophie reiterated, this is fairly new information. It's frankly frustrating information, right? That we're this far down the road, and this is what we've been handed, and that we couldn't come tonight with more clarity on that.
Is what it is.
So I'm just going to say we had a whole different presentation planned until Thursday morning.
So, go ahead.
Oh, moving off of that, so just so I understand, right? Like, I think our objective would be a four-way stop there, right?
Yes.
So if we went ahead with the larger project that's in the lower right, we don't know what that's going to do to traffic flow. We can guess, but we don't know, and we've sunk cost into putting something in place that could make traffic flow worse. It could make it better. It could be a proxy for a four-way stop, or it could make it twice as bad as it is now. Like, that's what I'm getting hung up on is I understand the idea of moving ahead and using dollars wisely and not spending them twice, but that to me creates a series of unknowns. And we also learned from the Bowen, Maine, that we had a design plan that everyone thought would work. And once we put it into place, we realized there were some areas that needed tweaking. And once we start putting in real curbing and real brick, like, we kind of lock ourselves in, right? And what if something pops up and we're like, oh, well, that's less than ideal. Now we're spending money to fix something that we just put in place. So for those reasons, as much as I hate the thought of just doing another trial and doing, you know, inching our way along, like, I feel like there's so many unknowns with that for me that I'd rather see us do the trial and get data and try to.
That's
try to
fair.
use
I
that.
think if you were, I didn't mean to go ahead.
Absolutely.
I
Go
was
ahead.
just going to say, I think if you ultimately did get to a four-way stop, it would look like that, right? You would lose the slip lanes. You would lose. It'd be a tighter, intersection. But it's a valid perspective.
Build it so we had the option, we'd have the same look, and you could put the curb in later if we needed to. And then you'd have it, and then it wouldn't be so much of a, if we do that the way it is, the way it's been described, we're stuck, and we're doing what he said. If we designed it a little bit so it's not, I know we want it to impede in the road, but if we design it so it looks like it's impeding, but not really, you could put that slip lane back in if we needed to. Understand what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Of course, my mic wasn't on.
Councilor Bilge.
I agree with a lot of what's being said now. And just one additional point I want to make is I agree that that's the direction we want to go. I don't know if that's the exact configuration, and my reason for maybe delaying that build out is we still haven't designed the rest of Main Street, right? We just decided that we want trees on one side and parking on the other, but we want to alternate. So I don't know how Main Street looks as it comes into that intersection yet. Maybe we would by the time we did that build out, but like, this is the concept, but exactly how does it look? And do we shift the whole thing more to the east side of the street, shift the whole thing more to the west side of the street? If we build the intersection before we build the rest of the road, we're kind of a little bit cart before the horse, in my opinion. But if we have the opportunity to do the whole stretch at once, then the intersection design would be a part of that. And maybe there's some other funding mechanism we could do when we get to that, even it might be further down the road, but.
To that point, I mean, right, part of this would essentially be like DeRozier's bump out that they currently have, right? And I mean, I think there's value there, right? So wouldn't we want to try to line things up so that we retain the flexibility on that side of the street to support?
That came up, a great idea today, that we could try to, I'm looking at that end of the podium, that maybe we could incorporate a permanent installation there that removes the pallets and, and just makes it a brick. That's where it's at, right? And that's an improvement that we bake into this particular project. So there's opportunities to make that permanent, and, there's operational adjustments that would be made with that, with snow removal and other things, but, there's opportunities to do that.
So it sounds like we don't know.
Hey, it's a big decision, and
Yeah.
like Sophie said, I would have loved to speak with more confidence and more clarity than I was tonight.
And I do want to recognize that you did a great job given the circumstances, so thank you, and to other staff as well.
Could I ask, and I understand it's frustrating, and I don't want to belabor this. I'm just trying to see what the options are, because I know in the past, rather than going to get an MDOT read on the engineering, we have simply done our own engineering with somebody who has the credentials to do that, similar to Stantec, who's presented this with the engineering. So
Brett and I had a conversation with MDOT about wrapping up this project, which would then lead us to undertake some of those things that council is really dialing in on, to do our own next steps with the traffic engineers that we're used to working with. So, I mean, there's only so much of this that's in the scope of the DOT project. But, so as I sit here, I think Brett and I have heard quite a bit. We'll probably go back and replay it again, because it's the hour is getting there. But I feel like, maybe I'm wrong, that based on what we have, we should be able to take some very specific questions that have been raised tonight back to DOT and Stantec, and come back on the 17th with very clear options.
And I do think I want to just what Dan and Matt were saying of like, it is a piece of the whole design. So making sure that we know what the whole design will look like seems like a really key piece. So great. All right.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Brett. All right, and then moving on to our last other business before we move into executive session. This is the budget workshop. So this is the introduction of the proposed capital improvement program for fiscal years 27 through 31. We have Jessica, I was going to say we have allowed, but Jessica is allowed to go on vacation. So we have Sophie here to introduce it.
Right now I'm trying to find.
Oh, yeah.
So what I will tell you is the charter requires that you have a presentation. Jessica was waiting diligently at the airport, and we lost her when she had to board her flight. So I am the fill-in Jessica. We can go as fast as you would like me to go, because she can come back and fill in the blanks as you need them. Yeah. So I do think it's important for people to understand that when we're talking about capital, we're talking about an asset that is worth over anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. The reason that there is a gap in there is there are some elements that are under 10, that are over 5 but under 10, that might not be considered a capital asset. They are not for, these are non-routine purchases or projects. So we would generally expect them to last more than a year and be over $5,000. We go through this capital planning process every year because we want to try to maintain a stable tax rate by planning. We want to make sure that we are thinking ahead, that we are reserving appropriate funding, and that we're trying to get to proactive replacement, renovation, or for the replacement to happen before we are at the end of the reasonable life where we're spending so much more money on maintenance and downtime. So she set me up to go through this very quickly, but Freeport's capital budget is broken into articles that generally follow departments. So the 5-year total plan for the police department is about $847,000, averaging, well, not averaging, going from a high of $235,000 in the first year to a low of $127,000 in the last year. So what this includes ongoing vehicle replacement, which is the largest recurring component. We also have some other projects, some protective gear, which is in the final phase of that purchase, refreshing in-car and audio-visual cameras, a communications up grant. We have our share of grant-assisted bulletproof vests purchases. These purchases are funded almost entirely through reserves with some grant component for the vests. The fire department, Article 2, this has a total of $437,000. Goes from a low of $52,000 this year to a high of $180,000 in year 5. So we, as it talks about, we are looking at communications upgrades in 29 and 30 and a vehicle replacement in 31. We do have a debt holder for a future debt placeholder outside of the capital plan. So I just want to bring to your attention, we're looking beyond FY31 at capital debt of about $6 million in future years, reflecting major apparatus need outside the 5-year horizon. So we want to look at that and talk with you guys about that a little bit during the process. The rescue, and I will tell you this is probably the last year you're going to see fire and rescue separate. We are finishing our work to try to understand that fire and rescue were funded as two very separate things before. We have been consolidating them over the last many years, and this year in the budget for 27, you're going to see operating collapse into a single fire rescue department because that's the way we manage it, and you should see that. In rescue, there's a $95,000 5-year total, with a low of $0 in 28 and a high of $45,000 in 29. This is for the monitors, stretcher life cycle. So the monitor is the defibrillator and communications upgrade. All of this is funded through reserve. Public Works, Jessica made the rounds for pictures, that's for sure. Article 4, this has a 5-year total of $1.5 million, ranging from $90,000 in 2028 to $550,000 in 2031. We have a plow truck, dump/plow truck replacements in 27, 30, and 31. a sidewalk plow in '29. We do split that with the TIF, which plays a portion because it's used in the downtown. And general equipment replacement in 31. There are two key assets which are not something that you're probably used to seeing often, and that is an excavator in FY30, and our fuel depot will need work in 2030 as well. Largely, this comes from reserves with that one cost share for the sidewalk machine coming out of TIFs. It is not, but the things that go in it might be. All right. So this one, I'm going to tell you what we have in here is still kind of in placement, in effort. But Article 5, solid waste, the entire plan currently is $220,000. We have energy efficiency conversion for $75,000 in 2027, container replacement in a truck in 29, and a forklift in 30. That energy conversion, we are still working with Albert. I think that might end up being a conversion that includes energy, but that would allow us to put another compacting container out there. So this article is kind of in draft at this point. Albert will be back in 2 weeks, and we'll be able to firm it up after we've looked out there. But it would be my preference to prioritize doing something with the containers, solid waste and a recycling. Comprehensive town improvements. So this is where we have a considerable amount of effort going. In Article 6, this is almost 4 million, 3.93 million. And it is has sustained road construction, streetlight, intersection, and visioning upgrades. Those are kind of front-loaded. Wayfinding implementation, stormwater mitigation, lot resurfacing, and Lower Main Street Railroad overpass match is still there in 2028. I don't know, based on what we're hearing, if it needs to stay there, but I think I'd like to hold that until we know for sure. And it also includes trail work with PAX and GP Cog, which is a $150,000 match in 2028. Predominantly, this is reserves and the GP Cog match fund that we talked about. Going to continue? This will be the fastest presentation you've had, I'm going to guess. Article 7, municipal facilities. This is our largest area. We have 8.1 million over 5 years. It goes from a low of 120,000 in outlying years to the high is 6.266 million, which does include a placeholder for a potential bond for public safety, whatever happens over there. In here, this is the largest article. She pointed that out. It has steady IT and reval funding, flooring and exterior improvements to the library, which would exterior improvements, which are the library siding in 27 and a new town hall roof in 28. Library renovations are broken out between FY28 and FY30. This comes from conversations with Winter last year through capital planning and also at MFC, Municipal Facilities Committee, around space planning for the library. Energy efficiency upgrades, painting townwide, and a major public safety program, which has 200,000 in FY28, 250,000 in 29 for reserves, and a $6 million bond in 29. I want to be very clear, I'm sorry, a $6 million bond in 29. I want to be very, very clear. That $6 million bond is totally a placeholder. We won't know until we get the study, but I'm trying to, if it's in paper, maybe Sebago will look at that and try to design whatever the need is within that. In Article 8, this is cable TV. We have, it's a total of 164,000. It's dealing with equipment life cycle that we would expect for cameras, audio, lighting, servers, and it is all funded through reserves. And in this case, those reserves are funded through the franchise agreement. Our destination Freeport TIF has a total plan of 890,000. FEDC has a placeholder in this plan of $60,000 a year in 27, 28, and 29. That's based on the strategic economic development plan that Brett had presented the draft to. So changes to that plan would change the TIF allocations, or if you want to change the TIF allocations. Sidewalk and accessibility repair, starting at $150,000 a year, tapering to $135,000 a year in FY30, and shared sidewalk equipment, $125,000 in 29. That's that sidewalk machine. The Concord Gully Brook TIF, we have that at $50,000 in 2027 only for matching grant, as a grant match for trail construction. The Village Corridor TIF has $4.365 million over 5 years. This is the steady $873,000 a year from 27 to 31. This you also saw in Brett's strategic plan. We would see town economic development ramping up from 195,000 to 219,000 across 5 years. Administration and public infrastructure aligned with the Village Corridor Initiative at $678,000 to $654,000 annually, all funded through the TIF that we just extended. So when you look at the proposed budget in FY27, that is $3.6 million in total, with a mix of funding of $2.4 million coming from reserves and $440,000 coming from TIFs for 2027. There is the plan summary, which is in the document that you received. Probably going to be easier for you to read online. In total, the entire 27 to 31 plan is approximately $20 million, with the peak in 2029 due to the public safety building if we were to do something there. The funding mix has $9.1 million from reserves, $5.3 million from TIFs, $6 million from grants, match, $0.18 million. Oh, wait, I had that. And grants match $1.8 million. $0.18 million, there we go. Beyond the 5-year needs, the future needs, based on what we're saying here and what we already have, is $41 million. So if you look at what we already have on the face of the earth, that is capital that will need to be replaced in the future, along with the new things that we have here that we're either replacing or bringing in new, it adds to $41 million of future need. The major drivers are municipal facilities, the public safety building, IT life cycle, library renovations, comprehensive town improvements, public works, and the police department. The TIF is a definite change to what we've been doing in the past. The corridor TIF would be bringing in the most at $4.37 million. So that's what we need. This is the part you're going to have to talk through during the budget process and with Jessica, because every year you look at the TIFs and you rebalance them and you add money from the fund balance or the previous year's operating that brings in. But what you will see is that we are underfunded in some TIFs. If you go back and look at what we currently have scheduled to expend versus what we have as a just expended 2027 versus what we have in the reserve balance as of December 31st, 2025, there are some places that we do not have enough money to cover that. So we are going to have to look at rebalancing the TIFs and how we want to allocate. I'm sorry, we're going to have to rebalance the reserves and determine how much we want to take from fund balance to put into reserves. So that's what I have.
Just a reminder, this is our first look. So the full document was shared through the agenda materials online. I highly recommend getting very familiar with that.
And we are more than happy to print paper copies. It's a 60-page document. We don't expect people to print those at home. If you want a paper copy, just let me know and we'll print one out for you. If you're happy not to use a paper copy, then please, that's why we didn't just immediately print them for everybody, because there are some people who will never look at it, and we wanted to save a tree and some money.
Also, I think we did this process in the past where there's a lot of questions that pop up. Counselors had emailed Sophie and Jessica questions to kind of save time and also just to kind of get ahead of some of these questions that we all will have. And I think what we did is we compiled them and shared them with the whole council.
Yeah, so what we did the last 2 years was not to stop conversations about other things, but people sent us, here are things I would really like to know about, here are specific questions I have. If you want to know the last 15 years, what we've done somewhere, it's a lot easier for us to know that before we come to a workshop.
Mhm.
But we would compile all of that and give it to you in advance of the workshop so that you could see it. It helps us figure out to get the data that you're looking for so that we're not sitting at the meeting trying to anecdotally do things when Jessica could just run some reports and have what you need.
So I think same way we have your written manager's report, it's good to have that written record for folks to revisit.
And while Jessica is happy to meet with anybody at any time about finance, she enjoys it. It lets her shine. One of the things that we thought was really important is making sure that everybody had the same information about the budget. So if Chip comes in with a question about a street project, we want everybody to also have the benefit of that answer. So if you meet with Jessica, we'll probably also write those questions down and try to give people maybe not as robust an answer, just because what you talk about for 15 minutes probably would take a long time to write out, but a summary of it.
So all that to say is, this is our introduction, first look. Questions, you can email to Sophie and Jessica in advance to help kind of make sure we get the information we need.
So we have a finance committee coming up. Please don't ask me the date. I have to look. But I one of the questions I'm going to have at the Finance Committee is about how do we want to structure the conversation. So last year, during the budget process, I think there was an effort to maybe try to stay higher level and identify areas like solid waste and things like that. Or do we want to just divvy things up and say, at this workshop, we're going to work on Articles 1, 2, and 3, and then I would have those department heads at that meeting. So sometimes it takes an initial kind of review to kind of figure out where the questions are going to shake out. I think the thing that is most important is that council really feels like it gets whatever answers it needs to feel comfortable about making decisions about the plan.
I know we are all very lively right now, but are there any questions for Sophie at this moment? Great job. All right. Councillor Pilch, will you enter us into executive session?
Be it ordered that the town council enter into an executive session pursuant to 1 MRS Section 4056A for discussion related to the town manager's annual performance evaluation.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right.